All right, friends, welcome back to Pages and Grace. My name is Jess. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's talk about my favorite books of 2024. So I hope you had a wonderful reading year in 2024. I have had so many favorite reads for this year. I had to whittle my list. I think I finished the year with like 119, 120 books. Never compare your books to someone else. I just a few years ago was struggling to read 7 books in a year. The year before that I read zero. Unless you're counting like science curriculum textbooks, and I read a lot of those. Please don't ever compare yourself or judge your worth on how many books you read. If you read 1 book this year, you did fantastic. You did better than last year. That's always my goal, is to just feel like I either read more often or read more thoroughly, read more challenging books. Whatever your goal is, just better than you were. My goal is always just be better than I was last year in some way. Improve myself in some way. I actually read less books in 2024 than I did in 2023, and I think that was entirely because of book 2. So much of my time that I would have been reading those other books, I was editing and recording videos, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. I don't regret that whatsoever. I actually haven't pulled the books out, so you're gonna get to go on a little treasure hunt with me. I have my list here in front of me on my tablet. These are in no order. I did pick, I don't know, we're going to pick together. I have 2 tied for the top book of the year. And we're going to pick together here at the end. I'll save those 2 books for the very end. The other ones, I didn't put them in any order. I really enjoyed all of them. Okay, let's start with this one. And that is The Chaos Grid by Lindsay Llewellyn. This was one of my first books from Enclave Publishing. It put me on a path to read a lot more from them and to see what else they had. This is YA science fiction, Christian science fiction. It definitely ends on a cliffhanger. It was so good. I was, after reading so much secular science fiction fantasy for young adults, this was refreshing. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised at how gritty it was while still being what I would consider clean. There was reference to maybe some abuse, but it didn't happen on page. It was something that the characters were going through or had gone through in the past. So it was so good. It kept me reading the whole time. It's not a very long book. And now it is part of a series, and she's going to continue this series, which all along, I feel like should have been the plan, because it doesn't end with a lot of closure. But I'm excited to pick up the second one. This book, definitely in my top 10 for this year. All right, the next book is a nonfiction book. Those are up here. I read this one before I started my BookTube channel, and that was The Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. This book, I had so many tabs as I was going through this book. So many things to go back to. It seemed like a really good reference to go back to. It was encompassing a lot of different things. It touched on a lot of different things. It was kind of like a mile wide and an inch deep. So it didn't go thoroughly into any of the topics, but it gave you a good introduction. So I really appreciated that. We are not a homeschool family at this point. It is definitely something that's on the table. I am not sure where we will go with that and where we'll be led to, but it's something I am considering. Anyone that's watched many of my videos probably knows that I love being outside. I love having my kids outside. I feel better. I feel like they feel better just being outside and getting into nature. And this book, the beginning of the book really talked about that aspect of homeschooling and how getting your kids in nature, taking them out of this rigid structure and keeping them home where they can be a little bit more wild and free. And I know my 3 boys absolutely do better when we have that time in nature. Very good book. Highly recommend. I think I gave it 4 stars. Nonfiction is tough to get 5 stars from me, but it was still very, very good, and I would definitely recommend. All right, the question is, can I put all the books away as I get them out, so I'm not left with a mess at the end? You're going to hold me accountable? Please do. Please do. The next one I don't have a physical copy of. It's the only one on the list that I don't have a physical copy of, and that is Born of Gilded Mountains by Amanda Dykes. 5 stars. Amazing book. I love the atmospheric feel. I want to go visit these mountains. Both. Actually, it was set in the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains. I loved the feel of this book and how it had a touch of romance, but it wasn't centered around the romance. It's dual timeline historical fiction. We follow these 2 girls as they were younger, as one of them comes back to visit and what happens and unfolds from there in adulthood. It was fantastic. There was mystery tied in. It just felt like it was wrapped up so well. I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely be reading more from Amanda Dykes. Okay, just kidding. I don't own this one either. And that was Mark of the Raven by Morgan L. Bussey. I just finished this series. 5 stars for all the books. I loved it. I got swept away into this fantasy series. So the beginning of this series is pretty dark, and she starts out in the ways of her family, and it's not always beautiful, and it's not always easy to follow the path her family has laid before her, and to decide if she has the courage to stand up for what she feels is right versus what is being presented in front of her. And throughout the series, you kind of see how the light, when she accepts the light into her life, how everything changes. And I think it was just beautifully done. I absolutely love this series. Highly recommend. It's one, I think I posted on Instagram, that it is one that I wish I could just put into the hands of kids and maybe get rid of some of the stuff that I see them walking around with reading. Highly recommend. Really enjoyed this series, and yeah, go pick it up if you haven't. I know everybody said that to me, so I'm passing it on to you now. Please go pick it up if you haven't already, if you enjoy fantasy. All right, next up on my list is He Should Have Told the Bees by Amanda Cox. This was my first Amanda Cox book. I was blown away. I was so surprised by this book. I love the cover of it. So we have Beckett, whose father passes away at the very beginning of the book, and she assumes that she will inherit his farm and be able to take over in his absence, and he actually left it between her and Callie, who she has no idea who Callie is. So throughout the story, we see her trying to figure out her own place. She has a lot of anxiety, a lot of things that keep her from being able to run everything all on her own. And Callie is trying to start her own business. She has her own thing going on and has some struggles with her mother all at the same time. And we kind of see how these 2 stories get woven together. I absolutely loved it. It was beautiful Christian fiction. I will read all the Amanda Cox books from now on. But highly, highly recommend this one if you have not picked it up already. Look at me putting books away as we go. As I look at the pile of books I stacked from my last video. I've had some books with some pretty heavy topics so far, so let's lighten it up a little bit. Have a little fun with a rom-com, a good clean rom-com. I always love this author for a good pick-me-up story. It's one I might reread next month if I have some time, and that is My Phony Valentine by Courtney Walsh. This book was so sweet, so fun. It had me laughing. It was exactly what I needed for this gloomy, dreary time of year. Highly recommend Courtney Walsh's rom-coms if you have not picked it up already. So this one is a romance between Poppy and Dallas. So Poppy has a failing restaurant, and she is trying to just make ends meet in her little town. And in comes Dallas Burke, this professional hockey player, and a adorable, cute romance ensues. I absolutely loved this story. It gave all the good feels without any of the content, so it's just a delight. Highly recommend this one. Okay, so this next book I had heard about over on BookTube and Instagram, and I finally picked it up and I read it and I figured out what everybody was talking about. It was so good. So good. The faith content in this author's books is so good. It's so deep and heartfelt, and notification, no school tomorrow. Okay. The faith content in these books, this author's books, she has 2 of them, have been so deep and so rich, and I have thoroughly enjoyed them. And that is The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp. I am someone who does not like when cancer or death or anything is the front and center of the story. This one, it was, but it wasn't. It was about this beautiful life of Mrs. Kipp and all of the amazing things that can be done with a life where you just say yes to the Lord's calling. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Would definitely recommend it. I actually got a chance to meet Sarah Brunsfeld this year. She came to my local library. Little did I know, when I read this book, she actually grew up in the same area. It was so fun to meet her, and she is a delight. And I absolutely highly recommend these books. If you haven't picked this up yet, do yourself a favor. Try it. See what you think. It was so good. It's definitely an impactful book. One I should probably reread at some point. This has been one of my favorite books. This has been one of my favorite videos to record so far. I just get to gush about all the books I loved. Man, makes it really easy to record a video when you just love all the books. All right, the next book is one I read, I think in June. And again, a new to me author. Was blown away by the story. This one, I don't believe it was Christian. This one I think this one is just a secular historical fiction. It didn't feel Christian. If it is, I don't think it was. I loved the story, and one of the things I loved most was that the characters just had this lasting impact on me. Even characters that weren't main characters. I felt so connected with all of them, which is really hard for me to do in a book. I don't do that very often. I might connect with the main characters. That's just not personally a reaction I have with stories a lot. And this one, I don't know what it was about her writing, but it definitely just drew me in, and these characters felt so close to me. And that was A Girl Called Samson by Amy Harmon. In this one, we have a girl who is serving a family. I think there's 10 boys in the family. Lots of boys. They have lots of sons, all different ages. We follow them before the Revolutionary War starts, as each of the boys starts to go into service to fight for their country. And oh, it was heartbreaking and it was beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. Deborah, who is the main character here, actually ends up following the boys into service and hides the fact that she's a woman and signs up for service and ends up fighting for her country. It was a beautiful story. I don't know what else to say about it. It was really good. Highly recommend this one if you haven't picked it up already. And it was really good to read right before the 4th of July. I would definitely recommend that if you haven't picked it up. Be a great time to pick it up. All right, friends, we've made it to the last 2. And again, those were all in no order. I don't really have a strong preference as to what order all of those would have been in. These 2, I don't know, they're both Christian fiction. One is historical fiction, dual timeline. One is a contemporary Christian fiction book. They're both so good. And they have both stuck with me. So I'm not going to pick. They both get the top spot. I don't know. I want you to tell me down in the comments which one would be your pick out of just these 2. I know they're both blue. That could be part of it. All right. And they are The Masterpiece by Francine Rivers and For a Lifetime by Gabriel Meyer. Both of these books just blew me out of the water. They stuck with me. This one, The Masterpiece, I read in January of last year, and I still think about this book. It was beautifully written. It was powerful. It was gritty. There was so much going on in their lives that was real, um, and heartbreaking. But seeing the Lord work through their lives, even through the tough things, things that we all go through. We all go through such tough things in our lives, but to see the Lord working even in those times, amazing. I really love this one. I was crying tears of joy. I was crying tears of sadness. It really impacted me. It's a very large book, but it is so worth the read. In this one, same thing. You could see all of the heartache and the difficult parts of life and see God working through everything. In their faith. The bond of these two sisters, this one is about twins going back and forth in time together, which was fascinating. I love that take on the time crossing gift. And this is the Timeless series. I've raved about this quite a bit on my channel. I have a couple other videos if you want to know more about it. But this one specifically, I don't know what it was about it, but this story, I don't know. It was everything I wanted out of this book. And so I would highly recommend both of these books. Any book on this list, actually, I would highly recommend. But whew, that's it for 2024. It was a fantastic reading year. Just absolutely fantastic. There were books I DNF'd. I DNF'd more books this year than I ever have, and that probably had something to do with why I had such a good reading year. I started this booktube channel to talk about all the books that I've read, and I have absolutely loved doing that. It's been one of the highlights of my year, and I look forward to continuing all of these videos in 2025. I will have a goals video come out at some point. I haven't really set concrete goals for this channel for the year. I think my main one is just make sure there's a video every week. Actually, no. 52 videos for the year. Life happens, and that's okay. Life's gonna come first. My boys will come first. But throughout the year, having 52 videos, that's my goal. If I have more, that's great, but I really don't want to have less than that. So, if you have made it this far in this video, I really appreciate you joining me for my favorite videos of the year, and I look forward to many more in the coming year. Thanks, guys. Bye.